Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Hobgood Brown. I'd like to welcome you to our Hand Up Congo virtual meetup focused on the Congo River today. Today, I'm speaking to you from Australia, from the lands of the Biripi people, who have been the custodians of this land for many, many generations. I extend my respect to the Biripi people and to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I'd like to acknowledge our partners for today's virtual meetup. They are the Friends of the Congo, which is a Washington, D.C. based organization focused on the well-being of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Rotary Australia, who's been our long-term partner. We're also commemorating today the International Day of World Indigenous People, which was observed last week on the 9th of August. Throughout the evening or the presentation today, you'll hear references to Congo. Primarily, we're referring to the Democratic Republic of Congo. There are two Congos, one with the capital in Brazza and one with the capital in Kinshasa. And so for ease of reference today, we'll just, when you hear the word Congo, you know that we're talking about the one with the capital in Kinshasa. Today's virtual meetup will be divided into two sections. The first half hour, we'll hear opening comments from our three guest speakers. In the second half hour, we'll hear commentary from our speakers to questions posed by the audience and by me. During the presentations, you can post your own questions to the chat box, and we'll pull those down. We'll try and get through as many questions as we can today, but if we can't get to your question during the session, we'll try and follow up with you individually afterwards. We'll close the virtual meetup at the 1 hour mark sharp. We know that many of our audience members today have deep histories and connections to the Congo, and we're very grateful for your attendance today. We welcome you all. We're very pleased to have you with us. Today, we're very fortunate to have three wonderful speakers who each bring a different perspective on the mighty Congo River. Dr. Joanne Yao teaches at Queen Mary University of London and has previously taught at Durham University and at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Her first book, The Ideal River, was published by Manchester University Press last year and forms the basis of many of Dr. Yao's comments today. I highly recommend the book to you. I found it fascinating. Dr. Yao hails from Washington, D.C. Mr. Samuel Yagase has been mobilizing rural communities in the Congo River Basin in Congo for the past 30 years. He's been on the front line of addressing challenges faced by river communities in the Congo and is based in Isangi, which is about 135 kilometers west of Kisangani. He's featured in the 2012 film Mabele na Biso, which means Our Land. Samuel's on the board of our partner, Friends of the Congo. And last but not least, Ruthie de Holton is a teacher living in Kinshasa. She was born and raised in the Congo and trained as a civil engineer while attending university in the United States. She's worked in water, sanitation, and renewable energy in Congo, Uganda, and Rwanda. She recently traveled by dugout canoe up the Congo, Ruki, and Mamboyo rivers. Due to her teaching schedule today, she's unable to be with us live, so we'll have a video of Ruthie's comments. Joanne, Samuel, and Ruthie, welcome. We're very fortunate to have you with us today, and we appreciate your time and contributions. But I think we have to ask ourselves, why is the Congo River so important? It's not the longest river in the world, with rivers like the Nile, the Amazon, and the Yangtze all longer than the Congo. But the Congo River is arguably the most significant river in the world in terms of its impact on global climate. The Congo River Basin contains the second largest rainforest in the world. And that rainforest absorbs more carbon dioxide than any other area of the world. It absorbs as much as 1/3 more carbon dioxide than is absorbed by the Amazon rainforest, which we all seem to be much more familiar with. The Congo River Basin covers 98% of the landmass of Congo. The river itself is a source of water, food, medicines, and transport for approximately 120 million people, being the peoples of Congo, Angola, Gabon, Cameroon, Congo-Brazza, and the Central African Republic. This is a significant river. It's crucial to the well-being of the world and to the peoples of Central Africa. I look forward to our discussion this evening, and Joanne, I'll invite you to give your comments now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And thanks to Hand Up Congo for putting this together and for inviting me. So in my opening comments today, I'd like to introduce my recent book, The Ideal River, which explores the importance of 3 transboundary rivers for international politics, particularly centered on the 19th century, the Rhine, the Danube, and the Congo rivers. And the book focuses on how efforts to tame these rivers have helped to shape international relations and the way international politics is conducted today. So in the book, I explore how, in the modern geographical imagination, transboundary rivers are framed as almost exclusively economic entities, as these frictionless highways that take people, goods, and ideas to market. So the book examines how the first international organizations in the 19th century were created to tame these rivers and ensure that they remained predictable highways for global commerce. Hence, modern international cooperation has from its beginning been orientated towards the creation of what I call the ideal river, a rational and reliable highway that enriches the state, enlightens the populace, and brings progress along the metaphorical river of history. In the book, I start with the 1815 Rhine Commission, which was created in the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars at the Congress of Vienna, and is the oldest continuous intergovernmental organization of its kind. I argue that this proto-international organization was set up to tame the Rhine River as an inter-European economic highway, which promised both to increase the economic prosperity of all parties involved, but also to make moral gains in demonstrating mastery over nature, making conquests from barbarism. In the book, then I discuss the 1856 European Commission of the Danube, which was created in the aftermath of the Crimean War. I argue that this commission, which might be considered the first international organization, was created to tame the Danube, particularly the Danube Delta, because the Danube represented a connecting river between the heart of Europe and the near periphery. So this commission was tasked with first ensuring that the Danube's mouth was safe for international shipping, but also to ensure that civilization flowed in the right direction from Europe outwards to bring everybody in the world into the light of European civilization. And then finally, I discussed the 1885 Congo River Commission that never materialized. The Berlin Conference, which is infamous for carving up Africa for European colonialism, was actually intended to prevent colonial competition by creating this neutral, non-sovereign space along the Congo River. However, the Congo River Commission never left the paper on which it was written. I argue that this was because the Congo represented an abstract and empty colonial geography waiting to be filled with European ideas, practices, and institutions. And really, this extreme abstraction doomed project. Hence, the actual river and its inhabitants never really mattered for European policymakers. Instead, they were really only interested in the river as a mirror into their own ambitions, hopes, and fears as they expanded their mastery of nature and societies across the globe. So rather than seeing these commissions as separate cases, I view this long history as a single narrative, and actors at each point sit in dialogue with the ideas and the institutions and the decisions that happened before. I think that investigating the history of these rivers are important to the way in which we approach international politics in general and international cooperation over rivers in particular, even today. I think the first thing that's important is it shows how the drive to master nature rests at the core of modernity and how it has shaped all the major institutions of international politics, from the sovereign state to international organizations. Even though discussing the environment can sometimes seem like quite a recent addition to international politics, I argue that the two have been long intertwined. Um, but I think my book also shines a light into the persistence of our adherence to the ideal river, the ideal that rivers ought to be rational, frictionless, and reliable economic resources that carry goods to market and that can be divided up in equitable use amongst participating societies to both create economic prosperity and also morally good societies. And I think this elevates the river's economic meaning above other understandings of the river. For example, as a habitat or an ecosystem, or as a spiritual symbol, or an agent even in its own right, which has the right to flood and shift in its bed as it wills. And the danger, of course, to all of this is that then successful cooperation between human stakeholders can very quickly lead us to a faster depletion and degradation of the river. So I'll end my comments there, but I welcome any questions. I've done a very quick rush through my arguments, so if anybody has any specific questions on anything I said, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thanks very much, Joanne. And we'll certainly come back to you with some questions, because I think that you've laid the groundwork there for some really interesting analysis and discussion of how that led to where we are today with the Congo River. Thank you very much. I'd now like to introduce Samuel Yagase. And Samuel, if you're online, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. I'm Samuel Yagase, working for a local NGO called GOVA. Working with the local community for about 3 decades now, and living near the Congo River. So I know the Congo River from 1996, 1964, my years both. So let me say that the Congo River is, I think everyone knows, it's really very, very important and very vital, and not only for Congolese, not only for people in the Central Africa region, but for the world. I think Kevin stresses it very well, saying that it's the second land, the second lung in the world, the second largest forest after Amazonia in Brazil, in Latin America. But it's very, very crucial because it's in terms of capturing carbon, it's really very first, in the world. So the interest is very high for everyone to protect the Congo river, especially because of a lot of peatlands, yeah, which helps a lot to reduce carbon, which is very, very important for everyone. Congo River is not only very important because of its long, the second in Africa after the River Nile with 4,700 kilometers, but Congo River is related not only to 5 or 6 countries, but to 11 countries in Central and even in Eastern part of Africa. The two Congos, the Congo Brazzaville and Congo Kinshasa, but most of part of the Congo River Basin is in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with about 62% of the whole basin. It's in DRC. Apart from that, Angola in the south, Congo Brazzaville in the west, Central African Republic in the north, with the Congo, with the DRC, they have 90% of the Congo Basin rainforest. And yeah, we can't neglect the Cameroon, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, even if they are small countries. So it's really, really very, 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 important. Around this river, we have, that's the very big forest, the second land we have already said about that. And Congo River is very, very meaningful for people living in DRC. First of all, I mean, Congo River is like, for local people, especially rural area and so on, it's like a bank. People in the villages, people in the rural area, they don't have, most of them don't have a job, to get salary at the end of the month. So Congo River is their bank, so they get food from the rivers. Not only Congo rivers, but with all the tributaries, in the area, it's playing a critical role in terms of feeding people. And Congo River as well is very, very crucial in terms of transport. That's the maritime, the first maritime network in the continent, Congo River, from Congo River, you can go to Congo Brazzaville, you can go to Angola, you can go to Central African Republic, you can even go up to Cameroon using some tributaries, even to Gabon. I think I would like to stress some important things. As people living, if someone living in the area, as someone living in the rural area, allow me to stress some negative aspect. When I say negative aspect, I know Congo rivers, the Congo River Basin, people are speaking of it at different levels, nationally or internationally. But the most negative aspect, when we are talking about Congo River or the forest, the second land, most of discussion, people in the area, people living in the area, people living with the Congo River, people living with the forest, they are most of the time left out. It's a little bit, it's sad. Let me give you just an example quickly. Before the COP in Egypt, the 27 COP in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, there was a pre-COP meeting in Yangambi. Yangambi is just near Isangi, where I'm living. So they called the meeting, they said, no, it was a scientific meeting to protect the Congo River, a scientific meeting to protect the forest around Yangambi. But I do respect people. I do respect people. I do respect the science and the scientists. But I don't think that protecting Congo River, protecting the second largest forest in the world, it's only the matter of scientists. It's a big mistake, and we really need to correct that. To me, we can't protect the Congo River. We can't pretend to protect the forest around the Congo River without people living under trees. We can't protect the river without people living along the river or near the river, because they are the ones who know the river, who know the forests, who have some traditional knowledge, because for decades, for centuries, they were protecting the river. They were protecting the river, the forest, and so on. So in different debates, in different debates on the Congo River, on the forest, scientists have a role to play. Yeah, I do agree with that. But it's a very, very big mistake to leave out people living with the forest, under the trees, who knows where to go, who know the name of the trees and so on, and leave out people living near the river. Debate from the UN, debate at the international level, at the national level, they are important. But I really think that is a very, very big mistake to leave out people living with the river, with the forest, and they have a critical role to play. And we can't fight the consequences of the climate change. We can pretend to protect the Congo rivers, to protect the forest without those people. So I really would like to see this opportunity to share my thought about that. And we have challenges. We are many challenges about the Congo River. First of all, is the first one is the very regular flood, and from Kindu, from Kisangani, to Kinshasa, through Equator province, there are a lot of flood due to the climate change, especially for this year. Normally we have flood. The rain season is around October, November, or even starting from September. But this year it came very early. A lot of flooding with lots of damages, and thousands of villages were underwater with all consequences you can imagine. Like, people lost their farms, crops, because the land was flooded. And like now people are facing diarrhea in some areas because of dirty water. Yeah, that's it's the challenges. Another challenges, I think most of people don't think of protecting the rivers. That's especially, I have to tell the truth, even from the local people. When I see people, putting everything, considering the river as a dustbin, it's very dangerous with plastics, with so all those things. I mean, it's especially near the big markets along the river, like Yangambi, Yanonge, Isangi, Bumba, Mbandaka, everywhere. So everyone is pouring dustbin in the river. It's a very, very big challenge we need to face, and and try to mobilize people, trying to raise awareness. We can't do it only at one place, but it's really yeah, it must be a common effort of different partners. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay, that's what I can share with you right now. If there is a specific question, I'll try to answer back.
Well, thank you very much, Samuel. Those are really important reminders. And I think that for those of us in Australia, we're just in recent decades have realized that the people who have inhabited Australia for thousands of years, they actually know a lot more about preserving the land than those of us who have come more recently. And we're in a process of learning from them how to preserve. And your message that the people who live along the river and in the river basin, they're the ones who understand it best. So we'll come back to you on that and talk to you a little bit more about how some of these challenges are being met by your local communities. I'd like to now ask that we run Ruthie's video so that we can hear her perspective.
I have traveled on the Congo River a number of times. The most recent is my trip in March of 2023. I flew to the city of Mbandaka, which is on the Congo River, and then I went in a smaller boat, a canoe this time, a motorized canoe, from Mbandaka up the Congo River, turned onto the tributary, the Ruki, and from there turned onto the tributary, the Momboyo, and went to the village of Lotumbe. What's memorable is just the scenery. It's just absolutely stunningly beautiful to be going through the Congo River Basin, the trees, the greenery, the people on the river, the canoes, all the boats, all the life on the river. I never get bored in the sunsets and the sunrises because you're in the tropics and it's gorgeous and it's reflecting on the river. So that's absolutely stunning. What was challenging when going on these, of course, on the motorized canoe, especially the heat, we did have a little shade in the center of the canoe. They put up 2 posts and there was a little shade. There were some people who asked to ride with us who sat out in front and who were sitting in the open sun for 8 or 9 hours, which must have been incredibly difficult. I didn't have to deal with that. Another difficulty, of course, is you've got to bring your own food and water and sanitation. A question about whether the Congo River is used as a superhighway. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was on the portion from Kinshasa up to somewhere before, and this time I was from Mbandaka upwards. But both times I saw big vehicles coming down from Kisangani, huge big barges that had trucks on them, cars and trucks that are brought into Eastern Congo through the ports, for instance, in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania or in Mombasa, Kenya. And you can drive as far as Kisangani. That's possible. It's difficult, but you can get them to Kisangani. And then they come down on the river to Kinshasa, which is why in Kinshasa we have a lot of vehicles that have a right-hand drive, although they should have a left-hand drive because Congolese drive on the right. But these are imported from East Africa, which are British colonies, and they have their steering wheel on the right to drive on the left. So anyway, I saw those cars coming down. Time and time again, saw boats that were meant for 12 people comfortably that had probably 100. People crowded in, people sitting on the wooden top of the boat as well, all crowded along the top. And some occasions, a couple canoes like lashed to the boat. I don't know if they were making the entire trip with them or if they were just lashing on to do some commerce. One of the things that struck me the most on this March trip, which I really, really loved, was seeing school children paddling themselves back from school. In Congo, in Western Congo, anyway, most of the children wear a white top and a blue pants or skirt. That's the school uniform. And so we saw a canoe with 4 young teenagers standing up paddling, and they were all wearing their and blue and white. So they were obviously coming home from school. They were paddling their own school bus, which was their school boat. And that just struck me as something very cool. You see, I haven't seen very small children paddling boats a long distance, but when I've been at ports before, when I've put into ports, like that 2.5-day trip, we stopped a few times in like the port of a village, and I saw a 6-year-old going out fishing close to the port. He didn't go far out in the river, but yeah, people do everything through that river. They send for supplies and bring them back. The village that I was visiting, Lotumbe, is not accessible by road, and it was accessible by air when missionaries lived there and paid to have the airstrip kept open, but that hasn't been. The airstrip is no longer viable, and it's not accessible by air, so it's just only accessible by river. And really, the Congo River is an incredible highway. The Congolese, as I was traveling from Mbandaka up to Lotumbe, my Congolese colleagues, but I say escorts because I had not been there before, and so they were explaining things to me. So the two Congolese men that I was traveling with said to me, there are two types of people: river people and forest people. I said, oh, okay. Or at least in this area, they were saying there's two types of people. So there's the people who live on the river all the time and who actually like migrate and they build temporary there would be what looked like villages to me, houses on stilts, and they said those aren't real villages, those are just settlements for the fishermen, and then they will move elsewhere. And then the villages were set further back, and the villagers live and hunt in the forest. And the Mbuti people, who have been called pygmy people in the past, the Mbuti people who are there, or the Twa people, are forest people. They live inland, they hunt in the forest. But the Congolese in general, all up and down the river, the ones who live inland have to come to the river and have to possibly ride it down to get to sell their produce or whatever. But I think, as roads die and airstrips fall away, the river is always still there, and it's an incredibly important part of Congolese economy and Congo's history. You asked if it's important to protect the river. Absolutely. It's very important to protect the river. It's important to protect all rivers around the world because of the fish, because the part that they play in the environment and in the ecology of all the countries that they're in. So just for the Congo River's sake, it's important to protect it. It's important to protect it for the people that live on it and make their fishing. There's a saying which is not entirely true: dilution is the solution to pollution. I had terrible qualms about my human waste going into the river, but I looked around at all the hundreds and thousands of other people's human waste were going into the river, and that river is an incredibly huge, large river. It has it's second to the Amazon in its flow, but it's greater than the Amazon in terms of steady flow, because the Amazon waxes and wanes more, and the Congo River does have a smaller and larger flow throughout the year, but it doesn't have such extremes as the Amazon does, because its tributaries straddle the equator. The Congo River is on both sides of the equator, and so the seasons are flipped. When it's dry season north of the equator, it's wet season south, and when it's dry season south of the equator. So there's always some tributaries that are coming in. So it has the highest hydroelectric potential of any river in the world. So that's another reason to protect it if we want to use it for hydroelectric power. There is already the Inga Dam at the mouth of the Congo River. There's been talk for years about making something called the Grand Inga. The river has the potential to supply the entire continent of Africa, but that would be such a multi-mega billion-dollar project. It's hard to keep track of, and Congo doesn't have a good track record of all the money getting through to where it's supposed to, and so the project has kind of stalled, but it has incredible hydroelectric potential. Also, the oceans of the world, because the Congo spills out into the ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean, and any pollution from the river will pollute the ocean. We are all interconnected on this planet, so whether you live in Congo or have ever been to Congo or not, what happens on the Congo River will affect you, everybody, in some way at some point anyway. I think that's all, Fergus.
So thank you very much, Ruthie. I'm sorry that you weren't here to be with us today, but we're very grateful for your comments and for your observations. Let's go into questions now for our speakers. I'd like to ask the first question to Joanne, if I may. Joanne, in your book, you talk about Henry Stanley attending the 1885 Berlin Conference, and you describe what a key role he played in that conference, particularly in shaping European attitudes about the Congo. Can you describe for us some of the impressions that Stanley created in Europe, the leaders of Europe, about the Congo?
Great, thank you, Kevin. Yes, so Henry Stanley was one of the only people at the Berlin conference who had extensive experience actually going to the Congo. So most of the diplomats there had never been to Africa, let alone the Congo. There were a few others who had been briefly, but Stanley was kind of the recognized expert. And there was all of this primary source evidence that talked about how when he spoke, um, everybody was captivated by the stories that he would tell. So he left quite an impression on the diplomats. But I think it's important to stress that it's not just Stanley on his own, but other experts, both international legal experts and cartographic experts at the conference, who created a general sense that the Congo River Basin was what I call conceptually empty. So this emptiness isn't so much that the diplomats thought there was nothing in the Congo Basin or there's no people, but that there wasn't any people or institutions or societies that mattered to them and what they were deliberating. And so there's this conceptual emptiness where, there are people there, but it didn't really matter to what we were trying to do here in Europe in trying to kind of structure world order. And so Stanley very much contributed to that impression through his travel accounts, where he basically said things like the Congo, unlike the Nile, had no history before the Europeans got there. So the way he's describing the Congo, it's like this empty space, and then the Europeans showed up, and now there's history, right? So I think very much for Stanley, the Congo represented this blank space that he can then imagine filling with villages and institutions from his own imagination, and that was very much left an impression on the diplomats, and they started seeing the Congo in the same way, that as an empty space where they can fill it up with the institutions from Europe.
And Joanne, maybe a follow-up question on that. One of the outcomes of that 1885 conference was eventually Europe's consensus that the King of the Belgians could have what we know today as the Democratic Republic of Congo as his personal property. And I think it's well documented what the consequences of that were in terms of Congo's history and the impact on the people. Was the fact that it became King Leopold's personal property, was that part of the reason that the River Commission never took off? Because now you had a river that belonged to one guy.
Yeah, so absolutely, I think that is part of the story. But I think for the diplomats at the time, they didn't see it as, gifting this large parcel of land to this one person to be his personal colony. Because at the time, Leopold was very clever in framing his project. And he sold it to the European diplomats as this sort of pseudo-international organization, or NGO even, in fact, that he was going to establish, that was going to oversee the Congo and is going to bring it into civilization, and is going to bring, commerce, civilization to the Congolese people. So whether or not the diplomats at the time bought sort of this repackaging of Leopold's ambitions, or whether they suspected what he did, he was very much convenient for what the Europeans wanted. So there was a lot of balance of power politics within Europe. So France didn't want the Congo to fall into British or Portuguese hands. The British didn't want the Congo to fall into the French hands, and they didn't want to give up the Niger, which is a river that they were very thought was part of the British Empire, and therefore they didn't want to talk about that as an international bone of contention. The Germans didn't want the European balance of power to shift too much by, allowing the Congo to fall into British or French or Portuguese hands. And so all of these, sort of inter-European politics really gave Leopold an opening to really seize this prize for himself.
Right. And we're still seeing the consequences of that today, I think, and that's quite a sobering thought. Samuel, over to you for a moment. You talked a bit about some of the challenges facing the river, flooding, the decline in fish stocks, pollution. In your community at Isangi, what steps are the community members themselves taking to try and address some of these challenges?
Yeah, thank you. I think at Isangi level, at the local level, I know it's very, very difficult to solve this big issue, this big problem, this big issue, because the river is not only at Isangi, it's almost everywhere in the country. But we refuse to cross hands and wait maybe for some miracle or wait for some international NGOs or the Congo state, which is doing almost nothing about that. We try to organize ourselves at the local level, setting up what you are calling the community fund, especially to support the flood victims. As I said, that thousands of the villages were underwater, and people lost their houses and crops, and so they had nothing to eat, nowhere to sleep, and so on. So we organized at the community level some kind of solidarity, asking those people, those villages which were not flooded, to support the victims. And we are organizing up to now monthly meeting and ask people to contribute like 1,000 Congolese franc, 2,000, 5,000, depending on your pocket. It's roughly around $1, $2, $5. And the money is put together, and we have a local committee to see how the money can be affected, can be spent to support those local people, local victims. And also, as we have a community radio, we have already started, mobilizing people, especially, and not only to support the victims, but also to take care of the Congo River, where we are. We recognize that it's not enough. It's not enough because if we want to protect the Congo River, we have to work with different stakeholders, internationally, nationally, and so on, and discuss with people living, especially living along the river, and send a message how we can fight little by little the pollution issue. As I said, most of us, we have not, Congo doesn't have good roads now. The best road of the country is the Congo River. And along the river, you have different markets. So people are coming from inside, from different villages. So what they bring as plastic and the sacks and everything, they pour it in the river. As someone said before, the river is connected to the ocean. So people are not going to pour plastic in the ocean. They pour it in a small river, and small river takes to the Congo River, and Congo River takes to the ocean. And we have to raise, it's a very, very, very important to raise awareness at local level from where we are. And also another challenge is just near the Congo River is this issue of fire, bushfires. So in many countries, like in the United States and in Europe, you have fires due to the climate change. But here, people are just putting fires to see how they can burn the forest just for nothing. So we've decided to fight that spirit, that's negative spirit, starting from the local level. But we are sure and recognize that it's beyond our capacities, but we can't wait for anyone. We need to start even smaller and grow little by little.
Thank you, Samuel. I think that lots of our audience today would recognize that true change occurs at the local level. Collectively, things can happen at a larger level, but without local change, nothing else is really possible. You mentioned earlier in your presentation about all of the countries that rely upon the Congo River. Have you had any engagement with your counterparts in other countries to take steps to protect the Congo?
Yeah, I didn't mention it before, but I mentioned what happened in Yangambi, the pre-COP meeting. Let me start from there. Scientists coming from different areas to Yangambi, which is a rural area in Isangi territory, just say we need to protect the Congo River, we need to protect the forest. Only meeting with scientists, leaving out local people, even local journalists from the community radio. To me, it was a very, very big mistake. It was a joke. Because after the meeting, they went out. Everyone went back to his country, but the forest and the river was left in hands of local people. So we need to change that paradigm. And from that, we say, no, let us start mobilizing local people, organizing indigenous people. And then, as we can't do it only from DRC, we had the idea of traveling in the area. We went to Congo Brazzaville, and then we went to Gabon, and recently to Central African Republic, And we would like to organize another trip to Cameroon, to Equatorial Guinea, and to Angola. And working with local organizations which are interested in the environmental issue, and going to discuss with local people and see and to learn from them. That's the very big mistake. Knowledge is not only at university. It's a very big mistake. And I can say that the very first professor of the very first university didn't go to university himself. He learned from local experiences. He didn't go to university. The first professor of the first university of the world, he didn't go to university. So please, let us be humble. Let us be humble and recognize that we didn't learn, and we can't learn everything from university. We can learn from, and there is a real knowledge from the village, real knowledge from people living near the river, real knowledge from people living under trees we want to protect. We can't only pretend to protect the trees and neglect people who are living under trees. And that's why it's very important even to start that coalition of the Congo Basin. We know it's not it wasn't easy. Friends of the Congo helped us to pay the ticket, the air ticket, the hotel accommodation, and everything to go to Congo Brazzaville, Gabon, and so on. But we have to continue and create a critical mass of to raise the local knowledge, to raise local local knowledge and local leadership to protect the rivers, small or big, to protect forests. I think by doing that, we can help the world. And when we recognize we can succeed alone. And here I want to be clear. We are not neglecting scientists. They have a very important role to play, but we can't make that mistake of neglecting local people. It's a very big mistake.
Thank you, Samuel. And that's a very, very compelling message. Joanne, I'd like to come back to you for one final question. The Congo River Commission never eventuated for reasons that you've explained earlier. What lessons do you think we can take from that? What lessons do you draw from that experience?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So lessons from sort of the Congo River Commission that never was. I think one, echo some of the themes that have been said by a number of speakers today, that one of, I think, the reasons why the Congo River Commission didn't succeed is this idea that somehow the Congo or any river or any geography is abstract and empty, and that we shouldn't see any place as empty, waiting to be filled with the ideas we bring from the outside. Right. And so to have representation, to at least recognize, listen to the local populations, to recognize, to allow them to be represented on the global stage. And sort of what Samuel was talking about, that knowledge hierarchy, right, of who has legitimate knowledge versus who doesn't have legitimate knowledge, that we should even out that playing field a bit more. But I do think the Congo River Commission and sort of, in setting all of these river commissions, makes me think about sort of rivers, what rivers are, right? And whether or not they ought to be thought of as solely roads or economic entities that serve us as human societies. And more and more, I push back against that to say, well, yes, we live in entanglement and engagement with the river and nature, but nature also has agency and has a vitality that we should recognize. For example, a river naturally floods. Right? This is what the river does, and it keeps the river healthy. It keeps the surrounding areas healthy. But as humans, we want to prevent flood, right? And so then there's a tension, and how we navigate that shouldn't always sit on the side of the humans, right, in preventing the river from flooding. But we should consider ways of allowing both sides to live peacefully together.
Thank you very much, Joanne. And I think that concept is taking currency now, because I've noted that in several instances around the globe, rivers are being given legal person status, which means they sort of have an organic significance, independent from the human society around them. It will be very interesting to see where that goes. So thank you very much for those comments. For those of you who are attending today and would like to contribute in some way to the efforts that Samuel and his community are making to protect the river and address some of these challenges, we'll have some information on our website after this webinar, because we're running out of time now. But I think you can see that Samuel's made a very compelling case for some of the needs, the impact of the flooding, the impact of burning, forest clearing, etc. And there are things that the community is doing. So please look at the Hand Up Congo website after this webinar, and we'll have some suggestions there for how people can support the efforts to meet some of those challenges. Before we close, because I promised that you'd be out at the top of the hour, which is just 2 minutes away, I'd just like to extend our appreciation to the wonderful volunteers who have made this virtual meetup a reality. Libby Gunurate, who has been the creative force behind this series. She's been absolutely critical to making all of this happen. And Libby, we are grateful for everything that you do. Fergus Ewington, who's in Vietnam right now, Kieran Hutchinson, Terry Shine, and Lucy Hopgood Brown have all played important roles in bringing this together today. So I'd like to thank each of you for your contributions, and I'm sure that everyone in the audience does as well. I'd like to thank our partners, the Friends of the Congo. I'd like to thank Rotary Australia. And in particular, I'd like to thank our three speakers. Samuel's really knocked himself out to get down to Kinshasa, where there's more stable internet connections. Joanne's got a very busy schedule, but she's been very generous with her time and her contribution this evening. So on behalf of all of the participants today, all of the audience, Joanne, Samuel, Ruthie, and all of our volunteers, thank you very much. If anyone has any ideas for future topics for virtual meetups, please drop us a note at the contact details on our website. We're always interested in looking at new ideas. And so on that note, I'd like to close the event tonight. For those of you who are in London or those of you who are in Australia, England is playing Australia right now in the Women's FIFA World Cup semifinal. So I'm sure that the moment everyone gets off this webinar, they're going to run to the TV. So may the best team win. Thank you, everyone. Good night or good day.